As you know, I don't make first impression videos of motorcycles. A bike's far too complicated to be able to digest every detail of its makeup and behaviour and then present that in a video that's of any good to anybody. So to that end, over 5 or 6 weeks, I've put 460 miles on this bike as of the end of filming this video. I purchased the bike new, and to that end it had only 6 miles on the clock when it was delivered. The past few weeks have been a voyage of discovery. The full charm and allure of this bike isn't apparent out of the box. It's something that evolves with time. Now, first of all, let's just get something out of the way for the duration of this and other reviews on this bike, because this is a work in progress. I'm going to refer to the bike as the Bullet. I know technically it's a classic 500 chrome, but like other models in this range, they're all derived from the Bullet, so I'm going to call it the Bullet. And if you don't like that, tough. Now, this is the oldest continuously produced motorcycle in history. The first Bullet rolled off the production line in 1932. That's 88 years. Now, although this 500cc version has now been discontinued, the 350cc version is still alive and kicking, and with just another 12 years to go, it'll be interesting to see whether this model ever reaches its centenary. The Bullet has evolved over the years, and the current machine is a very different machine from that original 1932 version. These classic derivatives of the Bullet take the rider back to those original 1930s machines, and because of its history, the Bullet range is the motorcycle that time forgot. There is absolutely nothing else like it on the market. But despite the length of time that this bike has been around, I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood motorcycles on the planet. I think the motorcycle press and social media by and large are responsible for this misunderstanding. For the first 50 to 100 miles this bike vibrates, and it vibrates a lot in any gear at any speed, and the harder you push it, the more it vibrates. I have to admit, there were times in the first 50 miles when I wondered what the hell I'd done by buying this bike. There were a couple of warranty issues that no one seemed to want to address. The build quality was sort of okay, but not great, and the vibration, I have to say, was soul destroying. But I am a seasoned biker. I've broken in enough single cylinder machines over the years, large and small, and I know that they do inherently vibrate a lot when the engines are new and tight. So I knew my first impressions of this bike were not going to be the full story. Sure enough, a little after 50 miles on the clock, and a sweet spot sort of appeared round about the 40 to 45 mile per hour mark. Now, I was still running the bike in, so I couldn't go any faster than that. In fact, strictly speaking, I should have been sticking to 40. But 45 miles an hour seemed to be that spot where the engine was harmonious. There was virtually no vibration detectable. But 30 miles an hour was horrendous, until I'd reached about the 200 to 250 mile mark. And although there was still a little bit more of a buzz than between 40 and 45, at 30 miles an hour the bike became quite pleasant. Now, last week we did the 300 mile oil change. In fact, I did a full service on the bike that's yet to be published. And according to the manufacturer's handbook, once you've passed the 300 mile stage, you can then open the bike up to the heady speed of 50 miles an hour. Again, this just resulted in horrendous vibration, but I stuck with it. And by the time we'd just tipped the 400 mile mark, that vibration had all but gone. The motor's freed up substantially, it's definitely become more willing, but providing that you change gear at the appropriate times, from a standstill to 50 miles an hour, this bike has actually become very smooth and civilised. Now, most of those first impression videos out there on YouTube and from other sources simply don't take this running in process into account when they're reviewing the bikes. For the most part, these bikes that they test are brand new out of the box. the worst time in the world you should be doing a review on this bike. Don't get me wrong, the Bullet is never going to be smooth and sophisticated, but I do think that the vibration issue on these bikes has been vastly overplayed. It's become an urban myth, a reputation that the bike doesn't deserve. Now, moving on to the gearbox, in actual fact I've been really impressed with the gearbox on the Bullet. I've heard some reviewers describe it as being sloppy and imprecise. It's not a stiff, notchy gearbox like most bikes are these days, but it's anything but sloppy. And I can safely say that in those 460 miles covered, I've missed a gear once. Like with any new motorcycle, you cannot rush the gearbox when new. The only issue that I have come across, and I would say that this is a common issue with all motorcycles, is that changing down from second to first, sometimes it can get a little bit sticky. Other than that, the gearbox has been perfect. Now, it might just be me, but I did find at first that the gear lever was in an odd position. It's very inboard towards the engine. And that did initially result in me having to search for the gear peg. It just didn't seem to be where you instinctively expected it to be. Although I would say this is not an issue that's persisted. I soon learned where it was, and after the first couple of miles that's not been an issue. Now, according to Royal Enfield, this bike produces just over 27 brake horsepower, which isn't a lot for a 500cc bike. But where the Bullet claws back a little bit of respectability is with the torque, with newton meters in the low 40s, which I suspect is achieved with a fairly large heavy flywheel. Now, as yet I've not been able to explore this because of the running in process. Most seasoned owners saying that the total running in procedure can last between 1,000 and 3,000 miles, so that's something I'm going to have to look into in the future. Fueling is a little bit glitchy, with the fuel injection system not being set up quite as nicely as it is on the Interceptor. Takeoff and shutdown can be a little bit abrupt, something that we've all become accustomed to with modern fuel injected bikes these days. And this isn't helped by a clutch, which can be a little bit of an on-off switch. Although clutch action at the lever is very light, it's not as gradual as I would like, but it is something that you get used to with time. The bike handles nicely, it's civilised. The bike behaves very predictably and inspires confidence, providing that you're riding within the bike's intended capabilities. If you want a quick handling, sporty ride, get the Interceptor or the Continental GT. That's not what the Bullet is for. It's designed to get you from A to B with style and charisma, not speed. And the suspension, although far from sophisticated, actually does a very good job. It's plush and comfortable, soaking up all but the worst road imperfections, and even then it doesn't jolt you and jiggle you about. Interestingly, the rear suspension does require a C-spanner to adjust it, which doesn't come with the bike. I thought that was really odd. It's adjustable for preload only, and it came set at mid-preload. I found this to be a little bit firm for me, so I slackened it off by 1 notch. And I found that during the running periods at low speeds, this gives a very stately and comfortable ride. We'll see how things go on as speed picks up with the bike a little bit. The switchgear is basically the same switchgear that you get on the Interceptor and the Continental GT, the only difference being the fast idle lever. Everything works exactly as it should be. I've certainly not encountered any problems with the Interceptor, but the indicator lights on the dashboard do let the bike down a little bit. Your main beam, neutral and indicator lights are very, very dim. I'm sure they'll be just fine during nighttime riding, but during the day you can barely see them. And in very bright sunlight, I often find myself having to shade the dashboard with my hand just to see whether I've got it into neutral or not. This can also be a problem with the indicators. Again, in bright sunlight, the only way to see whether your indicators are on or not is to actually look at the indicators at the front to see if they are flashing. And this has led to more than one occasion where I thought I'd cancelled my indicators only to find I hadn't. I think some LED upgrades for these bulbs are a must. Now, braking is provided by B-Bray. We've got a twin pot caliper and disc setup at the front and a single pot and disc at the back. The front brake is okay, nothing to shout home about, but perfectly adequate for this type of bike. And the rear brake, in common with a lot of rear brakes these days, does leave a little bit to be desired, but it's adequate. Now, this is, of course, the ABS model, and this is where I came across the first problem with the bike. The ABS check light wasn't working from day one. Now, I didn't notice this for 2 or 3 weeks until I actually picked up the handbook and read it. I rang the dealer about this problem a couple of times, but unfortunately no one answered, and eventually I decided to investigate myself. The fitting for the ABS bulb is easily accessible. Now, I'm not sure whether these are a directional bulb or not, whether they can only go in one way. They're one of these push-fit capsule type bulbs, and I found that it had actually been inserted the wrong way round. This was easily rectified, but the bike should not have left the factory or got through a PDI like that. Also, the speedo has not been inserted correctly. It's at a slight angle, which aggravates my OCD. And I think it is this lack of care and attention at the assembly stage in the factory that has served to tarnish the Royal Enfield name over the years. In essence, a Royal Enfield only comes 95% finished from the factory. The rest is left up to the owner. For the price you pay, the engine casings are not quite polished up to the level that you would expect. And the guy that was responsible for polishing up the fork stanchions obviously just lost interest halfway through. He sort of stopped when he got to the complicated bit, on both sides. Now, in general, the bodywork is pretty good. The quality of the paintwork and the chrome is acceptable, but the devil's in the detail, and that's where Royal Enfield lets itself down. Now, warranty issues. There was some damage to the paintwork on the left-hand side panel, and this was reported within an hour of receipt of the bike. It looks like someone had tried to correct a blemish during the painting process, and had actually gone through the base coat before the lacquering process commenced. It's a fairly common issue that I have seen before. Now, the initial response that I got when I reported it didn't inspire me with confidence. A warranty claim was put in, and I waited for weeks. Now, altogether, within the space of 3 or 4 weeks, I contacted the dealership 3 times over this with no news. On the final occasion, I was told that they were going to chase it up and get back to me, but a week later, I'd still not heard anything. In fact, I still haven't heard anything. So I eventually contacted MotoGP, who did, while I was on the phone with them, authorise a warranty claim. The only problem is the replacement part isn't available in the UK at the moment, and India isn't exporting at the moment. So this issue looks set to run for a little while yet. I will keep you updated. So the story so far is it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, although mainly positive. This little bike seems to improve with every ride you take, which for me is an enjoyable process. I've spent many a long hour riding around the East Yorkshire countryside, thinking about this bike, trying to work out what it is about it that gets under your skin. This Bullet 500 has generated a lot of interest on this channel, both good and bad. Positive comments from people that get it, and derogatory comments from people who, to be honest, I don't even know why they're watching the videos. People who just consider the Bullet to be a nostalgia enabling crutch for foolish old men. You know, the sort of people who have never owned a bike like this, so they've got absolutely no benchmark to judge it by anyway. I've had a long, hard think about this, and for me, it's not about nostalgia. For a start, I'm not returning to biking, nor have I ever returned to biking. I've had a bike since I was 17 of one form or another, so that's not it. And it's not nostalgia because bikes like this didn't exist when I started riding. They were long gone. The British bike industry had been dead for a good decade when I started riding. I grew up on a diet of Japanese bikes and, to be quite honest, looked down on British bikes because of the reputation they'd had. So no, the appeal is certainly not about nostalgia. For all the faults, what makes Royal Enfields stand apart from something like the Triumphs is, for me, despite the glaring faults, their honesty. Modern bikes are too smooth, they're too mechanically perfect, or they give that impression. They're too sanitised, they have no character, they have no personality. Motorcycle travel is, for me, and I believe it is for a lot of people, a visceral, primitive mode of transport that allows the traveller to become involved with the environment that he's travelling through. And most modern bikes deny the rider of that experience. It's all about speed and comfort and getting from A to B as quickly as you can. And one thing that the Bullet, and even the Interceptor for that matter, have in spades is personality and character. It's a friendly, unassuming bike that demands that you leave your ego at home when you pick up the keys. It's a motorcycle that has a soul. It actually at times feels as though it's alive. As far as performance goes, it hasn't got a lot to give, but it willingly gives you everything that it does have. And with the sun on your back and the wind in your face, you just know that this bike is a friend, a travelling companion, not just a mode of transport. In fact, I did even muse that if Chitty Chitty Bang Bang were a motorcycle, it would be a Royal Enfield Bullet 500. Now, that's it for this first instalment of the long-term reviews on this motorbike. I'll give another report just after the 600 mile mark. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support my channel. I do hope that you have enjoyed this video and that you found it useful, and if you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, don't forget, if you do subscribe, be sure to hit the notification bell so that you can be informed every time I upload a new video. That's it for now. I will of course be back next week, so until then, if you have to ride, please ride carefully, and I'll see you soon.